June 6, 1942. Tokyo. Just past midnight. The room smells of cigarette smoke and ink. Paper slides softly across a polished wooden table as an officer clears his throat, not loudly, not formally, but with hesitation. Outside, the city is dark. Blackout curtains seal the windows. Somewhere far away, a train rumbles through the night, carrying steel, fuel, men. The war hums quietly, constantly, even here. Inside the Imperial Japanese Navy headquarters, a handful of senior officers sit rigidly in their chairs. Admiral Osami Nagano, chief of the Naval General Staff, does not speak. He listens. Across from him, a naval intelligence officer. A commander, early 40s, eyes sunken from days without sleep, begins his briefing. His voice is controlled, too controlled. Reports from Midway have been analyzed, he says. Additional intelligence has been corroborated through multiple channels. No one interrupts. No one shifts. You can almost feel the tension settle, the kind that comes before bad news, when everyone in the room already senses the shape of what's coming. The officer pauses. Then he says it. American aircraft losses have been replaced. A few eyebrows rise, nothing more. Replacement is expected. War consumes machines. Nations rebuild them. This is not surprising. But then the officer continues. At a rate significantly higher than previously estimated. Nagano's fingers tighten slightly on the armrest. How high? He asks. The room seems to contract as the question hangs in the air. The intelligence officer opens a folder, and for the first time that night, his voice wavers. Midway was supposed to change the war. For 6 months, the Imperial Japanese Navy had moved like a blade through the Pacific, Pearl Harbor, Wake Island, the Philippines, the Dutch East Indies. Victory followed victory. American forces retreated, carriers burned, battleships sank in shallow water. Japanese planners believed they understood their enemy. America, they said, was slow, indecisive, soft, an industrial giant, yes, but clumsy, inefficient, divided. Japan's strength, they believed, lay in spirit. Precision. Superior training. Superior pilots. Midway was designed to prove it. Instead, 4 Japanese carriers were gone. Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Haryu, veterans, symbols, irreplaceable. And now, in this room, surrounded by maps of the Pacific and charts of fleet dispositions, the meaning of that loss is about to become clear. The intelligence officer clears his throat again. American aircraft production, he says carefully, has exceeded all previous projections. He slides a document across the table. Numbers fill the page. Factories, monthly output. Totals broken down by aircraft type. Fighters, bombers. Carrier-based aircraft. One officer leans forward, squinting. Another frowns. A third lets out a slow, almost inaudible breath. These figures, one captain says, choosing his words with care, must be exaggerated. The intelligence officer shakes his head. They are not. Silence. Then the number that changes everything. America is producing, the officer says, over 8,000 aircraft per month. No one speaks. Not immediately. 8,000. You can almost hear the calculation happening behind their eyes. Squadrons wiped out, carriers lost, airframes burned on decks at Midway. Replaced. Not in years. In weeks. Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi, known for his aggressiveness and clarity of thought, breaks the silence. How certain are we? He asks. The intelligence officer does not hesitate. These figures are conservative. That word lands heavier than the number itself. Conservative. Meaning the reality may be worse. Nagano finally speaks again. Our own production, he asks. Another document is passed forward. Japan's numbers are written neatly, precisely. Hundreds. Not thousands. Hundreds. Even at maximum capacity, even with corners cut, even with labor stretched to exhaustion, Japan cannot come close. The room does not erupt in anger. It does not collapse into panic. It simply stills. Because this is not a tactical problem. It is a mathematical one. For years, Japanese doctrine had assumed a short war. Strike hard, break the enemy's will, force negotiations before industrial weight could fully engage. That assumption was not casual. It was essential. Now, sitting beneath dim lights in a sealed room in Tokyo, that assumption is quietly dying. One officer flips the page again as if hoping the numbers will change. They don't. America is not just replacing losses. It is expanding. Building faster than Japan can destroy. Training pilots at a pace that renders even elite Japanese aviators expendable by comparison. The realization does not arrive like a shockwave. It arrives like pressure. Slow, relentless, inescapable. You can almost feel it pressing against their chests. Someone finally speaks the unspoken question. If these numbers are correct, a staff officer says, then a prolonged war. He does not finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. Agano closes his eyes briefly. Just for a second. Then he opens them. The war has not been lost. Not yet. But for the first time since December 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy understands something terrifying. Time is no longer on their side. And somewhere across the Pacific, in factories that never sleep, America is already building the future, one aircraft at a time. The meeting adjourns quietly. No speeches. No rallying cries. Only the soft scrape of chairs on wood and the knowledge that something fundamental has shifted. The war will continue. But hope, real hope, has just taken its first, silent wound. The men file out of the briefing room in silence. No one lingers. No one argues. In the corridor outside, footsteps echo softly against polished floors. The building feels suddenly larger, emptier, as if the weight of what was just revealed has hollowed it out from the inside. Rear Admiral Taman Yamaguchi walks alone for a moment, hands clasped behind his back. He keeps his face composed, but his mind refuses to settle. 8,000 aircraft a month. The number repeats itself over and over, like the steady beat of a drum you can't escape. For years, Japanese planners had comforted themselves with balance. Yes, America was larger, richer, more industrialized. But Japan, they believed, was sharper. Better pilots, better tactics, better morale. A few decisive blows, Pearl Harbor, the Philippines, Midway, would level the scales long enough to force Washington to negotiate. That was the theory. What the briefing shattered was not confidence in Japanese skill, but belief in the concept of balance itself. Because skill means nothing if the other side can afford endless replacement. That afternoon, a smaller group reconvenes. This time, there are no aides, no clerks, just senior officers. The discussion is frank. Our pilots remain superior, one officer insists. American training is rushed. Another nods. They lack combat experience. Yamaguchi listens, then responds quietly. For now, he says. He gestures toward the table, where the production figures still lie. How long before experience becomes irrelevant? No one answers. Because the math is brutal. An elite pilot takes years to train. Years of fuel, hours, instructors. An average pilot can be trained in months. If you have enough aircraft and enough men, you don't need perfection. You need volume. Across the Pacific, American carrier decks are already crowded. New squadrons rotate in. Fresh pilots arrive with logbooks full of training hours that would have taken Japan years to match. Meanwhile, Japanese carrier air groups grow thinner. Losses at Midway were not just machines. They were instructors, veterans, men who taught others how to fight. And no factory can replace that overnight. The Imperial Navy had always assumed its greatest threat was firepower. Battleships, carriers, guns. Now, a quieter enemy reveals itself. Time. Time favors the side that can produce without pause. Time punishes the side that must conserve. And Japan is already conserving. Fuel, pilots, materials, hope. That evening, Yamaguchi writes a letter. Not to family. To a fellow officer. He does not mention defeat. He mentions reality. Our problem, he writes, is not how well we fight, but how long we can continue. The words feel dangerous even on paper. Because once spoken, they cannot be taken back. In the days that follow, intelligence updates confirm the nightmare. American shipyards launch carriers at a pace that defies logic. Airfields expand across the Pacific like stepping stones. Every island taken becomes another factory extension, another platform for production to express itself as power. Japanese planners had believed geography favored them. Now geography is working against them. At another briefing, a junior officer asks a question no one wants to hear. What if, he says carefully, we cannot win a long war? The room goes silent. This time, no one dismisses the thought. No one scolds him. The illusion of balance is gone. What remains is the uncomfortable truth. Japan can still strike, still damage, still kill, but it cannot outbuild. And wars of attrition do not reward bravery. They reward capacity. Late that night, Yamaguchi stands on a balcony overlooking Tokyo. The city sleeps. Factories run. Somewhere, engines turn. But not enough of them. Across the ocean, entire cities exist solely to build machines of war. Japan has spirit. America has momentum. And momentum, once gained, is almost impossible to stop. The realization settles in, cold and heavy. From this moment forward, every Japanese victory will cost more than it gives. Every American loss will be temporary. The war will continue. But the outcome has quietly tilted. And the officers who now understand this must carry that knowledge into every decision, every battle, every sacrifice yet to come. The next carrier operation is planned anyway. There is no alternative. In war, understanding does not stop momentum. It only sharpens the pain. Weeks after the briefing, Japanese aircrews gather on sunlit decks, engines warming, propellers blurring the air into a constant roar. From the outside, nothing has changed. Orders are crisp, signals precise, discipline absolute. But something is different now. You can feel it in the pauses between sentences. In the way officers study maps a second longer than before. In the silence that follows casualty estimates. They are no longer planning for victory. They are planning for exchange rates. At the operational level, the math becomes unavoidable. Every mission briefing now includes questions that were once unthinkable. How many aircraft can we afford to lose? How many trained pilots can be spared? How long before replacements arrive? The answers are never comforting. Japanese aircraft production continues, but at a pace that feels painfully slow compared to the flood pouring out of American factories. Aluminum shortages worsen. Fuel becomes rationed even for training flights. Young pilots arrive at squadrons with fewer hours than their predecessors. Not because standards have dropped, but because time has. Veteran aviators feel it immediately. Lieutenant Commander Shoichi Yokoi, a seasoned pilot, watches new men struggle with carrier landings that once felt routine. He corrects them patiently, carefully. But he knows the truth. These men are being rushed into a sky that no longer forgives mistakes. Meanwhile, American air groups grow thicker. More aircraft. More pilots. More replacements waiting just beyond the horizon. What Japan loses today, America replaces tomorrow. What America loses today, Japan feels for months. In planning rooms, officers begin using language that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. Attrition. Delay. Containment. The goal is no longer to break the enemy. It is to slow him down, to bleed him just enough that negotiations might still be possible. But negotiations require leverage, and leverage is built on strength. Reports from the Solomon Islands deepen the dread. American aircraft appear in numbers that overwhelm defenses. Airfields once considered secure are bombed daily. Pilots speak of skies filled with enemy planes, not elite aces, but competent, relentless crews who just keep coming. Quantity has become a weapon, a terrifyingly effective one. In Tokyo, senior officers argue behind closed doors. Some insist Japan must strike harder, faster, gamble everything on one decisive blow. Others see the trap. A decisive blow means committing resources that cannot be replaced. It means risking the few remaining elite pilots on a bet against mathematics. And mathematics is not afraid. One staff officer summarizes the dilemma with brutal clarity. If we conserve strength, we lose slowly. If we gamble strength, we may lose quickly. No one contradicts him, because both outcomes end the same way. The numbers from Midway were not just information. They were prophecy. Every subsequent battle confirms them. American production does not slow. It accelerates. New aircraft models appear faster than Japanese intelligence can catalog them. Improved engines, better armor, longer range. Each iteration widens the gap. Pilots begin to sense the shift before command admits it openly. In the air, they face enemies who return again and again, even after heavy losses. There is no sense of wearing them down. Only the opposite. Every engagement leaves Japan weaker and America unchanged. By late 1942, the realization hardens into something darker than fear. Resignation. Not surrender. Not yet. But an understanding that the war is no longer about winning. It is about how much damage can be done before the end arrives. And that realization, quiet, clinical, merciless, reshapes everything that follows. The war continues. The battles grow fiercer. But beneath the roar of engines and the thunder of guns, a silent truth governs every decision. Japan is fighting against arithmetic. And arithmetic never gets tired. By early 1943, the language inside Japan's naval planning rooms has changed completely. No one says it aloud, but everyone knows. The war has crossed a line it cannot come back from. Admiral Izoroku Yamamoto, architect of Pearl Harbor, understands it more clearly than most. He had warned, even before the war began, that Japan could run wild for 6 months. Maybe a year. After that, he had said, he could promise nothing. Now, that warning echoes in every briefing. In Rabaul, Yamamoto studies reports under the dim light of a desk lamp. The numbers blur together, sorties flown, aircraft lost, pilots killed. Each report confirms the same pattern. American losses hurt. Japanese losses cripple. There is no recovery curve. There is no rebound. Just a steady narrowing of options. Japan tries to adapt. New tactics are introduced. Air defenses tightened. Missions shortened to conserve fuel. Training programs accelerated to push pilots to the front faster. But acceleration comes with a cost. Pilots with fewer hours make more mistakes. Mistakes in the air are fatal. Veterans fall trying to protect novices. Instructors die in combat roles they were never meant to fill. The reservoir of experience drains faster than anyone predicted. America, meanwhile, absorbs its losses without changing rhythm. That alone is devastating. By mid-1943, Japanese officers begin to see something terrifying in combat reports. American pilots are no longer inferior. They are adequate. And in war, adequate in large numbers beats excellence in small ones every time. A staff officer presents new intelligence. American aircraft output has increased again. Not stabilized. Not slowed. Increased. More factories. More shifts. More women entering the workforce. More engines. More airframes. More spare parts than Japan can even target. The officer does not need to explain the implication. The gap is widening. There is one last hope: technology. If Japan can field a superior aircraft, faster, more agile, longer ranged, perhaps quality can reclaim its advantage. Design bureaus work desperately. Engineers cut weight, push engines beyond safe limits, sacrifice durability for speed. The aircraft look impressive on paper. But paper does not replace aluminum. Engines fail. Parts wear out. Maintenance becomes a nightmare in tropical heat. America solves problems with abundance. Japan solves them with improvisation. One scales. The other exhausts itself. Strategic discussions grow darker. Some officers argue that the only way to counter American production is to raise the cost of victory so high that political will collapses. Others know better. America's factories are not driven by desperation. They are driven by momentum. And momentum feeds on challenge. Every loss justifies more output. More planes, more pilots, more ships. By late 1943, Japanese intelligence stops asking how many planes America builds. They ask how many they can destroy before the end. That change alone tells the whole story. The psychological shift reaches the flight decks. Pilots sense it immediately. They still fly with courage, still fight fiercely. But the expectation of survival fades. They are no longer part of a machine that grows stronger with use. They are part of one that wears down. And they know it. Yamamoto never sees the end. In April 1943, his aircraft is intercepted and shot down after American codebreakers track his flight. Even in death, American systems prove superior. Better intelligence. Better coordination. Better reach. The arithmetic holds. After Yamamoto's death, the war continues without illusion. Japanese leadership no longer debates whether America can be stopped. They debate how long resistance can last. The answer is never encouraging. By 1944, the skies over the Pacific belong to the United States. Not because every American pilot is better, but because there are always more of them. Always another wave. Always another replacement squadron waiting. Japan's air arm, once feared and respected, is now stretched thin across too many fronts. It cannot regenerate. And regeneration, more than bravery, decides modern war. The numbers from that quiet briefing after Midway were not just data. They were destiny. From that moment on, Japan's leaders were no longer steering toward victory. They were navigating decline, trying to shape how the end would look, not whether it would come. And as the war grinds on, one final, terrible solution begins to form, born not of fanaticism alone, but of desperation. If Japan cannot match America's production, if it cannot win in time, then perhaps it can change the cost of time itself. That idea will soon take shape in the most tragic way imaginable. By late 1944, the war has a different sound. It is no longer the sharp clash of evenly matched forces. It is a steady, overwhelming roar, engines, propellers, bombs, arriving in waves that never seem to end. From the deck of a Japanese carrier, now a rarity, the sky looks wrong. Too full. Too crowded with enemy aircraft. American planes arrive in formations so large they blot out sections of the horizon. Fighters escort bombers. Bombers escort more bombers. When one wave turns back, another appears behind it. This is not tactics. This is output made visible. Japanese officers stop asking where the Americans are coming from. They know. They are coming from factories. From airfields carved out of jungle in weeks instead of months. From carriers launched faster than Japan can even name them. From training programs that replace pilots as predictably as machines. In briefings, maps are still used. But the real battlefield is no longer the Pacific. It is American industry. And Japan cannot bomb it. Inside Japan, the situation grows desperate. Cities strain under shortages. Aircraft factories are dispersed to avoid bombing, but dispersion reduces efficiency. Skilled labor is spread thin. Materials arrive late, or not at all. Every solution creates another problem. Meanwhile, American production grows because of pressure. Bombing Japan increases output. Losses justify expansion. Expansion fuels confidence. The system feeds itself. A Japanese staff officer writes in his diary, "We no longer fight the enemy's forces, we fight his capacity to replace them, and we are losing." The skies over the Philippines, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa confirm it. American aircraft losses are high, sometimes shocking. But the response is immediate. More planes. More pilots. More ships. There is no pause. No exhaustion. Just continuity. It is here that a final shift occurs in Japanese thinking. If Japan cannot win by destroying American forces, if it cannot outlast American production, then it must make every loss count. Not tactically, psychologically, strategically, politically. This is where desperation becomes doctrine. The idea is not new, but now it is formalized. Special attack units, Tokotai, kamikaze. Young pilots are trained quickly, given minimal hours, one-way missions, no expectation of return. Not because Japanese leaders believe it will win the war, but because it is the only way left to change the arithmetic. One plane for one ship, one life for maximum damage. Not efficiency, impact. For the pilots, the logic is brutal but clear. America can replace planes faster than Japan can train pilots. So the pilot must become the weapon. Human guidance systems. Living warheads. It is the ultimate admission of imbalance. American sailors feel the shift immediately. The attacks are terrifying, sudden, personal. But even here, production answers sacrifice. Damaged ships are repaired. Sunk ships are replaced. New carriers arrive with crews already trained. The system absorbs the shock. Again and again. Japanese officers watch the results with grim clarity. Even this does not stop the flow. Even this does not slow the factories. The cost rises, but not enough. By 1945, Japan's skies are thin. Fuel shortages ground pilots. Aircraft sit unused because engines cannot be run. Training flights are canceled. Some pilots go into combat having never fired their weapons. Across the ocean, American pilots log hundreds of hours before combat. The difference is no longer subtle. It is absolute. The realization that began with numbers after Midway has now consumed everything. Strategy bends to production. Tactics bow to logistics. Bravery is swallowed by scale. Japan is no longer choosing how to fight. It is choosing how to end. And in the final months, as American aircraft fill the skies over Japan itself, that original briefing, the quiet moment when impossible numbers were first spoken, proves to have been the true turning point of the war. Not a battle. Not a bomb. Not a surrender. But the moment Japan understood, it was facing a machine that could not be outrun, only endured. And endurance against endless production has a limit. The end is coming. And the men who saw it first saw it years ago on a piece of paper under dim lights in a silent room. August 1945. Tokyo is burning. Not from one raid, but from many, night after night. The sky glows orange. The air smells of smoke, oil, and charred wood. Firestorms roll through neighborhoods faster than orders can be given. And overhead, American aircraft fly almost unchallenged. For the men who once sat in that quiet briefing room after Midway, this is not chaos. It is confirmation. Inside what remains of Japan's command structure, the conversations are no longer about victory. They are about survival, food distribution, civil defense, how to maintain order in a nation being dismantled from the air. The numbers that once shocked them, aircraft per month, engines per day, pilots per week, now manifest as reality above their heads. This is what production looks like when it reaches its final form. Overwhelming, relentless, inescapable. Some officers still speak of honor, of sacrifice, of fighting on. But even those words have changed meaning. They are no longer instruments of strategy. They are expressions of grief. Because the truth has long since been accepted in private. Japan did not lose the war in 1945. It lost it the moment it committed to a long conflict against an enemy that could industrialize war itself. When the atomic bomb is dropped on Hiroshima, then Nagasaki, it feels sudden to the world. To Japan's planners, it is not. It is merely the final expression of imbalance. Another weapon born not from desperation, but from capacity. From laboratories funded without fear of shortage. From factories untouched by bombing. From a system that never stopped building, testing, refining. The same system that produced thousands of aircraft a month. The same system first glimpsed in numbers after Midway. Emperor Hirohito's surrender address is broadcast. The language is careful, formal, reserved. But beneath the words lies acceptance. The war has become, not necessarily to Japan's advantage. That understatement carries the weight of millions of lost lives, and one unavoidable conclusion. Years later, surviving Japanese officers write memoirs. Some speak openly, others cautiously, but many return to the same moment. Not Pearl Harbor. Not Midway itself. Not Okinawa. But the briefing, the paper, the numbers. The moment they realized the enemy could lose battles and still win the war. One former naval officer writes, "We fought with courage, we fought with skill, but we fought against a nation that turned time into a weapon." That sentence captures everything. Because bravery cannot defeat multiplication. Training cannot outrun mass production. And belief, no matter how powerful, cannot replace factories. The war ends. Japan rebuilds. America demobilizes, but does not forget. And the lesson of that quiet realization after Midway becomes part of military history, studied long after the smoke clears. Wars are not decided only by who fights harder. They are decided by who can keep fighting. You can almost imagine that moment again. A dim room. Cigarette smoke. A sheet of paper sliding across a table. No explosions. No gunfire. No surrender. Just numbers. And the instant an entire strategy silently collapses. That is where this war truly turned. Not in the sky. Not at sea. But in understanding,